Today I made a set of standing stones in the style of Stonehenge, each representing a different season. This is practice for another project I've planned involving all 4 seasons coming together. If you have any ideas on how to represent the seasons, let me know in the comments below. I originally got this idea because I had a set of coasters sitting around. These coasters are meant for DIY projects, and I mean, what is this but not a DIY project? I started out by making a bunch of standing stones out of foam. Once I had a bunch of stones cut, I started adding all of that texture by rolling them along the face of this large rock I found. It's best if you get some cracks and dents in there, and that really makes it look like real rock. With some nice textured rocks, I then start prepping them all on the bases. I was debating on whether to make it all look the same and just the season has changed, or to make them all look different. And I think settling on making them all look different is pretty good, because I don't need to be as specific with the foam. No matter what I did, I really wanted to have this doorway, gateway looking thing as one of the pieces at least. With all of the stones standing, I then made a mix of homemade sculptor mold, which is just watered down plaster of Paris with some torn up toilet tissue. I just added this all over all the ground, and it doesn't really matter if it gets on the rocks, it just adds a bit more texture. Once it's painted, you can't see the difference between the plaster and the foam. While the plaster was still wet and my hands still a mess, I added in these little bricks that I just wanted to add a bit more detail. They end up getting covered up a lot by the dirt and the flock that goes over the top, but I still think the parts that you can see, it just looks a bit more interesting. And of course I'm working with foam, so there is a required step to cover everything in a coat of black Mod Podge. This will work as a great base coat because I do want to give it a spray of a grey primer to give it a bit of a zenithal highlight. Once I have this really handy zenithal highlight, I come in with a bunch of paint and totally cover it. I cover each set in a different coat of paint, which will kind of represent the season. And once we finish painting all of the rocks and adding everything in, it really adds like another level of texture and detail that you wouldn't get just painting all the rocks the same. The next step in these rocks is giving them a bit of a grey dry brush and then covering them all in a black wash. And then once that black wash is nice and dry, I'm just going to come in with that same grey and give it another dry brush, hitting all of the edges and getting all of the highlights. This dulls down all of the colours from before and makes it look like real, ever so slightly magical stone. Once that is all painted, it's then time to go in and give it a coat of dirt, and this will be the first layer of flock. And once that's all dry, I'm going to sweep away any excess and give it a nice coat in a watered down PVA glue, which will seal it all in place. It is then time to start personalizing each one to represent their seasons. First up is the autumn one, by far the one that I was the most excited to do because I have those little leaves. But first I'm going to add some lichen. Probably should have done the leaves first, to be honest, and then added the lichen on top just because it would have fell a bit better. However, it looks alright the way it came out in the end anyway. And I am just super happy with these tiny leaves. Got to be the best $20 I spent in my life buying this Green Stuff World Hole Punch. And then for winter, another technique I've shown off before, it is just bicarb soda, a little bit of mica powder, water, and some PVA glue and white paint. And that will give me a nice, snowy sort of texture paste. Unfortunately with this batch, I did forget the white paint, and that means that the snow does end up discoloring pretty fast because it reacted with something in the peat moss or something in the air maybe. I'm not quite sure. But I do end up fixing it just by covering it in some more bicarb soda and then giving it a spray of a matte varnish. For spring, I add some flowers, as well as some nice long grass. I think in future with spring, I need to get some more colors of flowers, and just kind of fill it with flowers. And despite my static grass applicator being missing in action, it still goes on pretty good. And this one here is the summer one, where I'm just using some shorter, more dead grass, and I'm giving it a full coat all over the base, except for those little stones. For winter, I also come in with an extra detail with these little static grass tufts that I then come in with that PVA glue and bicarb soda mix and stipple some on over the top. And then to dull down those bright, vibrant colored paper leaves, I'm just going to cover them in a bit of a brown wash. I then fill all of the dioramas with a bunch of little 3D animals that I've printed, and this really adds to the scale of these giant stones. I then give it a final cleanup with a black paint around the rim of the bases. And with that, they're done. I'm really happy with how these came out, especially the stones. I really think they all look really nice and unique with that hint, the subtle hint of another color underneath. However, I do think some of them are missing something. If you have any ideas, please leave them in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week with something different.